Solid.
Yes, sir. Um, I truly appreciate you. Thank you for joining me. Um,
I, I appreciate you having me, bro. We've never met, of course, but yeah, it's good to meet you. We cross paths online, of course, like all of us do, honestly.
right, it's solid that you were able to join with me here. I mean, from day one when I've joined the community, that I've noticed you, I've recognized you, and truly, I just want to let you know that your representation truly matters. Um, you know, growing up from an era where our big brothers
Right.
laid a foundation that was worth our travel, worth our journey. And you have cemented your foundation here. Just want to let you know that.
No, I appreciate that, man. And I totally agree with what you're saying because much of what we're doing as a community of advocates because you don't have to have any titles or degrees or any affiliations to be an advocate as long as you're in the space getting your knuckles scraped and your knees bloodied, then you are an advocate. And that can be just being a patient, being a caregiver. This is all part of that process. And there's a lot of people that came before us, just like in anything that, that we as a people have actually fought for. The people that came before us that laid a foundation that, anything from just us walking into the mall, to go shopping, somebody had to die for us to have that opportunity to do that. So we can't forget about those folks. We can't be complacent in thinking that the struggle started here. It didn't. The struggle started centuries ago. And so we have to be able to teach one another, reach one another, and just stay in the spaces and be diligent. Just stand on principle and be diligent. So I appreciate what you said, and I moved the needle forward just as all of us are doing. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So on this day, I'm going to hop right in.
Yeah,
Okay. So, good brother Chelcie, on this day, January 15th, as I forever celebrate the birth and the legacy of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., it is truly an inspiration, honor, and privilege to speak with you. Chelcie, again, you and I have never sat down and held a formal conversation ever.
right.
So I just want to let you know here today that you are seen. In the background, I see your advocacy for multiple communities in multiple spaces. So again, today, I gift you your forever flowers, my brother. And thank you for joining me on the Chronically Well podcast, where we have real conversations with real people that need to be heard. And Chelcie, you're truly someone that needs to be heard. Could you give the community a summary of who you are?
Absolutely. And thank you again. Um, I guess we could start with a little bit of my background. I was born and raised in Northeast Georgia, a little town called Toccoa. Not a lot of people know of Toccoa, but they never heard of it, but they know of it, but they don't understand how they know of it. A couple of big things came out of Toccoa. One was James Brown. James wasn't born and raised in Toccoa, but that's where James and Bobby Bird met. If you saw the movie Get On Up, when James and Bobby met in church singing in the choir, that was in my hometown. James had gotten out of, I guess, juvie and then ended up in Toccoa, and he met Bobby, who was a member of the Famous Flames. The Famous Flames were already an established group. James kind of came in and took lead. And that's pretty much, in a nutshell, how the music began right there in my little hometown. The other is a lot of people may be familiar with the miniseries on HBO many years ago called Band of Brothers, about the Curry men who trained for World War II in a little camp up in Northeast Georgia. That was in my hometown as well. And the funny thing about, and we're talking about history. That's the funny thing. about that particular piece of history is like nobody even taught us that when we were coming up in my hometown. That was the crazy thing. And I thought it was just me because I know how I was as a kid. I was barely paying attention in class and maybe I just dozed off or something and didn't hear it. But I asked some of my classmates, some of my white classmates, they knew of the camp, what became of the camp later on, but they didn't know of that history because nobody talked about it. So that was where I was born and raised. Um, Lived in Atlanta for almost 30 years. Now I'm currently in Pensacola. I was diagnosed with diabetes, type 1 diabetes, back in 1988, 89. I was 25. I think most folks call it LADA. Now I don't know because that wasn't talked about when I was diagnosed. I was the only way I was really diagnosed. My roommate at the time, we were both musicians at a local church in Athens, Georgia. And I started having the symptoms, the frequent urination, lost weight. I got down to like 152 pounds, which is really thin for my friend. I'm almost not quite 6 feet, more like 5'11". So 152 is pretty skinny for me. And he kept noticing I kept getting up in the middle of church to go to the restroom. And so he took it upon himself to get an appointment with me at a urologist. And, the urologist, he did the test and just came back in. Well, yeah, you get type 1 diabetes. And just that was it. Next thing you know, I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital that I worked at. So my coworkers got to walk down the hall and look at me sitting in the hospital room in my pajamas and start wondering what was going on. And yeah, so being diagnosed in the 80s, not a lot of information was available to me at that time. It was just they give you some books, stay in the hospital for a week, and they kick you out after a week, and you're pretty much on your own. No support, no connections, any of that stuff. I didn't really find any community until social media kind of took off. First person that I met with diabetes online was probably on MySpace, and then eventually went to Facebook, and then here we are with Instagram and everything else. Around 2005, I experienced diabetic retinopathy in my left eye. Started with blood leaks. And at the time, I didn't really have good enough insurance to really have the surgery to correct it. So I basically just worked and drove around with basically, streaks of blood in my eye, just making do with best I could until I changed jobs, got another job, and got better insurance, got the vitrectomy, the surgery to remove the blood, and gradually got most of my vision back. After I got most of my vision back, the same thing happened in the right eye, but the damage was worse because the retina had detached. And so now I have barely 10% vision in my right eye. So can't really see or read out of this eye. And so it just took some, went through a lot of depression and some really dark days, but you had to push through. And that was just all I knew, was just pushing through.
Right. That's a part of our makeup.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because my grandfather suffered with cancer, laying on the floor in the middle of the night. Laying on the floor in the middle of the night in pain, but wouldn't tell nobody. My father, when he was suffering with cancer, he didn't want anybody to come over and see him. He didn't want anybody to see him that way. So yeah, that's pretty much in our DNA. To some people like to label it persevere, but we just call it going through and getting through.
And today, at least we're able to recognize a lot of those things, and we do have a better sense of not only community, but being able to be vulnerable in that aspect.
Yeah.
Because back then, I mean, our families were struggling for a lot more.
Right.
My dad graduated from high school in 1976.
Right.
January, I think, 2nd, 1976. His father passed about his father passed that January 1976, and he said no one in his house really knew how bad his father's cancer was.
Hmm. Yeah.
He said his father would just lay in the bed, um, but he was like he always thought that his dad was going to get up and be better, but
Right.
he
Exactly.
never did. And
Yep.
that's a part of our history.
Yeah.
And it's,
Exactly. And that was I guess in the sense what I was going through when I was, still working with the blood in my eye and then trying to adapt to losing vision in the other eye. It was just that was the blueprint. You know, a lot of for me, it wasn't the darkness was, dealing with the okay, well, I can't do this and I won't be able to do that. And then the fear of the other one going bad and then I'm done. That's always been the fear ever since then. And so it was just a matter of there had to be something better, you know, and that is what basically led me to becoming a diabetes advocate around 2012 is once I started meeting more folks in the spaces that were living with diabetes, that were becoming advocates, being active. It finally dawned on me that if I don't do something, then this is just going to be another bad luck story. And that's all it'll ever be is just some hard luck story that I got to share every time somebody asks. Every time I bump into somebody, then all I got is a hard luck story. So I had to make this into something useful.
you change
If it's going to be a story, then let it be a story that helps somebody.
where you change the course of your story.
Exactly. Then I'm changing my own narrative, so to speak. I'm not just something that somebody can talk about. I know a guy that lost vision his eye, this, that, and the other. And so when I started doing stand up comedy around 2000, just as a whim, just to see if I could actually do it. And comedy is one of those things, you get on stage and do it, and you really don't know how good you are until somebody actually pays you. If it ain't number $5 or a plate of wings, then apparently somebody likes what you do. And so I started doing that. And then, I did festivals and did some shows. I didn't really go on the road. I didn't really want to become a road comic because being on the road is not a healthy place to be. If you know any musicians, they'll tell you
Mhm.
that being on the road is not a healthy place to be. My brother's a musician. And as a comic, one, you don't make any money. I mean, the people will pay you $250 to travel 1,000 miles to do a one night show. They won't pay for your travel. They barely feed you. And the only food you got to deal with is probably bar food or whatever's at a hotel that you end up staying in. So that's not a healthy lifestyle for a person living with a chronic illness. So that's why I never really pursued becoming, I say a professional comedian. So I figured like, okay, well, if I can do this, and how can I mix it with advocacy? And so I started talking about my condition on stage. And what happened was a lot of times after a show, I mean, the first time it happened, I did did some jokes about my diabetes. And after the show, a woman came up to me and stuck out her hand. I thought she was trying to shake my hand. Basically, she was showing me her insulin pump. Said that she had never talked about her diabetes in any type of setting. She just basically kept it to herself. She didn't want to expose herself to letting people know that that was what she was living with. And so that kind of was I guess, the spark that told me, okay, that I can take either these jokes or my stories, and then I can incorporate it as a way to help people be more open to talking about their condition, because there's power in talking about your condition, whether you're trying to get help or whether you're just trying to relieve that burden, that weight that's on you, thinking that it's all on you, that you're alone. And the more you open yourself up to being giving of your story, of your compassion, your just being able to just release all that, that's actually going to go out and help somebody. You put that energy out there, it'll come back. And then the support will come, and then the communities will develop, and then you're no longer alone. And that's what happened to me. The more I talked about it online, the more people I met, the more opportunities opened up to go to conferences. I've been to conferences in Europe now, and I've been to other conferences across the world. And I just did a panel in Chicago last month. Well, yeah, month before. It was in December last month. And these opportunities, I didn't go looking for them. All I did was be present and be diligent in speaking my truth. And people will listen, and they'll ask you to come and be in their forums because they want to, get to know you and get to know your story. And these are the things that especially for any person of color living with any chronic illness, I don't care if it's diabetes, HIV, irritable bowel, all that, as long as you're out in these spaces telling your story, because somebody's going to listen. But the truth of the matter is somebody needs to listen. But we can't sit around and be complacent waiting for somebody to open the door for us. If you go to the door and the door is locked, then go find the key.
Right. That's
Okay.
something. I don't know if you've ever heard the recording with MTV and Tupac, and he mentions that. He said, if I go into a hotel room or I'm in a hotel and I know people are in there having fun, throwing around salami and all those things, it's like it might start off like I'm asking, can I come in? Can I have something to eat? And he said, then he opened the door. He actually sees the party happening. And they're like, nothing's going on. And he's like, I'm hungry. Can you please let me in? He's like, after a little while, it's going to turn into he's banging on the door trying to get in. He's like, and then they don't let him in. He said, I'm picking a lock. I'm coming through the door blasting. He says,
Right.
our people of our past, of our history, um, they begged for a lot of things. And also with his like, but then that changed over the years. They started showing up, started showing face. And that helped change the narrative. His like, you have to be able to see it. If you see it, you can believe it. Basically, it's like you don't gotta accept it. Like you just said, like I come across many people in this space, this online community, that are always like, I'm not being let into these spaces. It feels as though I'm being blocked, and I'm like, do everything you can to show up. Even if that means you're not in that space, you're reaching out to someone like me reaching out to you, Chelcie. That's me showing up,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
You accepting this invitation, you're showing up. That's a
Right.
community. We just started a community right there.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
You were diagnosed at 25 years, a quarter century, a whole quarter of a century. You knew nothing about this,
Nope.
right? You had a life that you were leading and living, and as a person of color, you knew like nothing can stop me. We've been beat down, we've been blockaded, stopped from doing so many things. It's like you were like, nothing can stop me. Diabetes came along.
Yeah.
For many years, you probably still felt nothing can stop me. They told you, well, you felt the bleeding in your eye. That wasn't going to stop you.
Yeah.
It still hasn't stopped you.
Right. It's interesting because when I mean, I always joke about this. The funny thing, when I got diagnosed, I had just learned, I taught myself how to bake. And I got that, I picked up a bag of like Nestle's Toll House chocolate chips, and I was like looking at the recipe, I can do this. And then next thing you know, I'm baking these things, and me and my roommate are just eating these things. He ate so many, his face broke out, way too much chocolate for his system. And just when I learned how to do that, that's when I get hit with the diabetes. I was like, well, ain't this some stuff? So and you go through that mindset that, that you're invincible. And, a lot of young heads think that, well, I don't see what the struggle is, because they think that just because I literally heard this in one of my work meetings at work. There's a young girl. Um, we were talking about DEI and stuff. And my supervisor lobs this lame question and was like, do you feel that things have changed and this, that, and the other? And it's like, she just said, well, I'm just glad things ain't as bad as they used to be. Okay, well, let's dissect this. One, you don't know how bad things were. You just heard how bad things were. You think things aren't as bad as they used to be, but the truth of the matter is just because nobody's walking up and just hitting you in the head and letting you bleed in the street doesn't mean you're not bleeding in the streets today. Because the truth of the matter is, what you're not seeing is the systemic destruction of your people, of our people, or any marginalized group of people, because the enemy got smarter. You can't beat us away. You can't put hoses on us and make us run away. So they had to come up with a way to try and prevent us from gaining what they have. We redlining and all these other processes to keep marginalized folks away from what they have. It's just like, greed is a funny thing. It's like you get so greedy that at what point do you want to just stop? You only greedy because you don't want to lose it. You ain't gonna spend it. So why are you sitting there holding on to it so tight? And so those systems were put in place to keep us from being able to have what they have. And just because these celebrities that look like us have this doesn't mean that things have changed. They would like to believe that. Well, Beyonce's got money. Why? I don't understand. No, it doesn't work like that. And so that's why we have to speak up and just reach out to the power of our elders. Look at Representative John Lewis. That man sat there as a kid, 20 some years old, got hit in the head with a billy club, still had the scar to the day he died.
And for multiple lifetimes, he continued to just push forward and bring his people along.
Mm-hmm.
He never gave in or gave up. He fought and fought and fought and loved, and he loved hard.
Could you imagine that man was living today?
With the things he would be doing, even would be so much more, so much like like we have these things at our hands.
Mm-hmm.
He actually had to travel hundreds and hundreds of miles to show up.
Yeah.
Sometimes on foot.
Sometimes, exactly. Sometimes on foot. Coolest thing I ever saw him do was there's a kind of a geek or nerd convention in Atlanta called Dragon Con. It's basically like Comic Con, but it's in Atlanta. It's been there for decades. And he showed up at Dragon Con one year wearing a khaki kind of raincoat and a backpack, the same thing he was wearing when he was crossing Edmund Pettus's bridge and got hit in the head. He wore that to Dragon Con. And that was just about the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I don't know if he ever realized what he did in that one moment, that he brought that into a realm where a group of people that probably never would even thought about what he did, that he exposed them to that, to educate them just in that simple gesture. He didn't go do it with an agenda. He just went there to have fun and just to be around these young people. Some people they were old as he is, but that single gesture, he crossed a barrier to remind these folks, many of especially the black kids, the people of color that were there, but what he and people like him went through just so they could be in those spaces. And showing the non-people of color what people of color had to get through to be in these spaces. Now, whether they were receptive and understood it or not, that's neither here nor there. But, it was just the fact that he showed up and showed out. And getting back to our discussion, that's what we need to do when it comes to our health advocacy, is we need to show up and stand on purpose. There was a time when I started my podcast, I wanted to talk to more advocates of color to pick their brains about what they were experiencing online, especially during that time after George Floyd was murdered. Because something happened on social media at that time. A lot of diabetes organizations were getting called out for their presence, for the way they were presenting themselves online. I mean, you could take one in particular and just scroll through all their posts on social media and see nothing but white people. You know, there's another one you could scroll. They'd go through all these galas. They had these galas where it was like some big social event, and everybody's dressed to the nines in their little glittery evening gowns, and guys in tuxedos standing around holding each other, clinking glasses and all this kind of stuff in the name of diabetes. But you don't see nobody there that look like you. And the first time and then you call them on it, it's like, well, no, we're open to everyone. No, you didn't ask nobody.
You didn't open those doors.
You did. That's not opening the door.
Right.
You know, that's not opening the door saying just who did you tell was open to everybody? You didn't. It's like I use this it's like if you could bake the most delicious pie in the world and in your head say, I want to share this pie with everybody, but you didn't tell nobody.
Right. It's almost like we know there are certain, like, even in the education system. I've been an educator for the last decade plus, and I actually teach media literacy, and I try to teach and show and educate the young people that look beyond your front door.
Right.
You know, when many people, especially if you grow up in an urban community, from the hood like myself, you look outside your door, you see so much traffic. You see, there may be a liquor store here, certain person in the community, everyone knows, so much going on. You got to somehow visualize beyond that.
Right.
And that takes people showing up for you, people opening doors and letting you choose if you want to walk through them or not. There should be no blockades telling you from the jump, like, this is all you're going to see. This is all you're going to be. This is all you're going to do. And that brings back around to what you said about, like, those spaces that were saying that, oh, it's welcoming, but you didn't, representation was not showing.
Right.
Representation truly matters.
Right.
Just like I said from the beginning, just seeing you in certain spaces. I've seen you all over, whether it was in Germany, I want to say, was it Italy or Spain?
Yeah, Florence, Italy.
Yeah, and I did just see you in Chicago. I've seen you all over. And that gives not only myself, but it gives other people a sense of that if Chelcie can be there, he can be in that space and I can too. Because like you said, with good brother John Lewis, he didn't know who he was reaching at all times, but millions and millions of people learned from his experience.
Right.
He will go down forever as nothing less than 100. Nothing less. His representation truly mattered. And I remember being a AmeriCorps public ally and having a chance to meet him.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, he wasn't even vice president yet, Biden, he's still senator. But I remember having a chance to meet them at a event in Wilmington, Delaware, and just being there, being in the presence of this of this person of color, this person of prominence, just to see the crowd of people that look like us in tears. It showed that every single thing he did was a measurable step.
Right.
Measurable steps or incremental into us reaching our ultimate goals.
Yeah. And see, these are the examples we have to look to, because I hear a lot of people of color who live with diabetes wanting to become advocates. That's the blueprints we need to go back to. We need to go back and, go back in them dusty closets, pull out them blueprints of John Lewis and Shirley Chisholm, Barbara Jordan, Medgar's. The line between advocacy and activism is blurring daily. That separation is almost no more, because let's be clear. Come next week, we need to be in defense mode, because it's coming and we need to be prepared. We don't, yeah, well, there's those type, well, we'll just give it a chance. And okay, yeah, all right, whatever you say, but we already been there. And so this is affecting all of us. It ain't just a political thing. It's more or less because obviously we already know how politics flows into healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not be blind here, and let's not be complacent, and let's not be foolish. We need to hunker down and stand on principle and start protecting one another, because that's the way that this isn't about just obtaining or complaining about the price of insulin. We need to talk about the accessibility of insulin to those who, even whether they can afford it or not, do they even have access to it? Where I'm from in Northeast Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, there's not an endocrinologist within, say, an hour's drive. So you got people living in that area who may not be able to see an endocrinologist if they don't have a way to get to that specialist. They're living with positive type 1 diabetes and only managing it at the CVS clinic. That's an accessibility problem.
Speak on that. Probably about 8 months ago, I recorded with a young lady in North Carolina. She lives in a rural area, and she said that it took her 2.5 hours to get to her endocrinologist.
Mm-hmm.
And like, she literally lives in the sticks. She said there's nothing around.
Right.
She was like, so when she does see people online talking about how they're suffering from high blood sugars and whatnot, and she said she truly didn't understand why they were complaining. She was like, because I'm sitting at home trying to heal myself all the time. And I said, wow. And I just had like had a moment of like a conversation with her, and just had to like share with her more insight on how to reach people not only in the community,
Yep.
how to force your way into spaces so that you can see more. Because once she was invited into certain spaces, she was like, oh, this isn't normal. She thought it was normal.
Right.
So for her blood sugar to stay above 3 and 400.
See, and this is what and that actually speaks to something else that's been that I've been pushing back against, is what we are putting online as patients living with diabetes, because you've got groups of folks who live with diabetes who express or present themselves as advocates, but I don't think they take into consideration what it is they're presenting on social media. You have to think about what you're presenting and who is seeing it. There is such a thing, and I truly believe this, there is such a thing as toxic positivity. These folks who want to dance and wiggle and show, I'm putting on my Dexcom here and I'm putting my Dexcom there, and I'm like, I'm doing this, that, and the other. Have you given any consideration to the folks that may be seeing this that don't have access to that stuff? And I'm not just talking about folks from different countries, not folks from India or maybe Africa that don't have access to these things. What about the folks that live 200 miles away from you, like this young lady who lives in the States? If you're giving any consideration to how that woman feels when you sit there and cry and moan about, you got bad news from your endo, she could use some bad news from her endo if she had a way to get to him for a 2-hour drive. So this is the thing that gets me is you're bebopping and bull jiving on Instagram, but you're not giving any consideration to who's seeing this. But you call yourself an advocate. And what you are is an influencer because you're just trying to do this and the other, try and make a buck off some either pharmaceutical company or some manufacturer. And for what? A dime?
And if you are considering yourself an advocate or even an influencer, if you're sharing certain things like that you're able to do to accomplish, why aren't they sharing how they're able to get to that? Share that so that it will open up the possibilities for someone who's not able to access it. So truly, they're not even thinking about access. They're just truly so
absorbed.
Yes, self-absorbed that they're not like they can't think outside of their own box.
Right.
It's all about I gotta look good for this. I gotta look good for this. Like
right. And like I said, when after the George Floyd murder, and what happened is a lot of these orgs just started opening up there and they were like, we want to hear from the Black voices. We want to talk to all these, this, that, and the other. And yeah, and they did. They opened up their spaces to heard our stories. There was a lot of negativity, kickback from a lot of white people living with diabetes or caregivers of people with diabetes. Well, diabetes doesn't know color. Well, the price of diabetes does, because a lot of these folks living in lower income communities can't afford what you have. So what about that?
We're about to get this tap on the door again. We were talking about George Floyd. February is around the corner. So we're about to get that tap on the door again.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's what's going to happen. And then, maybe they'll start reaching out again and they'll start celebrating, and we'll see if they, ask, hey, could you contribute something, this, that, and the other. But the thing that got me though is like, we went through the George Floyd murder. They were reaching out to us, wanting to hear our voices. Of course, there was kickback from from a lot of white people with diabetes or caregivers. And so there was this big movement. I mean, I could sit down and go down the list of the orgs because I still remember them that were reaching out to us and giving us all these opportunities to share and this, that, and the other. But then, like I guess you've seen this in a lot of online videos, 6 years later, back to normal, back to the same thing. You can scroll and see the exact same thing. It just went away and nobody was talking about it. And that was one of the things that it didn't really, I wouldn't say it discouraged me, but it affected me in a way that I kind of let my podcast kind of wane off because I didn't see a lot of people talking about the same thing we were talking about back then. When we were talking about inclusivity and trying to get folks in these spaces, we were talking about that heavily. But then as time went on, we just went back to, here's my Dexcom and this is what I live with every day and all this kind of stuff. And so we're back to that again. And right now, if I were to scroll, I mean, I know algorithm, that gets tossed around, but if I were to scroll through Instagram, I still don't see a lot of patients of color talking. I still see more white kids talking about diabetes, and I still see some of the physicians that are like the folks from what is it? Taking care of your diabetes. They do their thing, and they're always in the feeds. But we just got to start getting in these spaces and getting in. One thing, we just got to get in these conferences. We got to start making a way for us to show up in these conferences because a lot of these folks will want to have the conversations about diversity and inclusion in either diabetes care or getting the information out to lower income communities or just black and brown communities, the Asian community. They're wanting to have these conversations. But the problem is, because like if I was in Chicago, I was the only patient there. So what we need to do is find a way to get more patients in these rooms to get away from these healthcare professionals talking about us. We need to be in the room so they can talk to us. Now, I know the challenge is many of these conferences like ADA, there's a cost to get in them. Even when the nonprofits that have allowed me to go to some of these conferences, they have to pay my way to get in.
Right. Even if you have a grant or scholarship, you also got to consider
Exactly.
travel expense.
Yep. Lodging, all this kind of stuff, because the conferences aren't going to do it. You know, and I'm just going to say it. There's one conference that basically has been fighting long and hard to keep a lot of patients out. I mean, if you got the money, yeah, come on in. But are they going to make it easy for you? No,
No.
they ain't gonna make it easy for you. So one of the things that I want to try and do is just follow the lead of some folks that have actually helped me out. Is like creating a way or a nonprofit to help bring more patients into these conferences.
Right. Bridging that gap.
Bridging the gap that's being perpetually strengthened. You know, it's like I said, they want to make it more difficult for us to show up. I mean, a lot of these places are fine having these conferences where we can just sit around and just sing along, tra la la, holding hands, going to camp and all this kind of stuff. But when it comes down to brass tacks and standing on purpose and being able to be in these spaces when they're talking about us, that's when the barriers end up. So to me, we need to, one, find a way to get more patients in these existing conferences. Two, we need to start finding a way to start creating our own conferences. And I ain't talking about these conferences where we go around doing a whole bunch of singing and dancing and all this kind of stuff, and then all this, the whole Patti LaBelle gonna walk through. No, we need to sit down and start having some serious conversations of how we can strengthen our communities. Because I told you, next week, we got stuff to take care of because we don't know what this is going to do. Because last I heard, they're coming for us. Amazon don't want to deal with DEI anymore. Walmart don't want to deal with DEI anymore. And there's other dominoes that are going to fall because in their mindset, with anything DEI related means, oh, well, this is discriminating against white people. What? How did that get in the conversation? We're just trying to make this an even playing field for all of us because there has been this history of systemic racism prevent us from being in these spaces. We're given these opportunities. So, I mean, my employer created in DE&I, I guess, I don't know, it's not really that's actually a department now, but my supervisor tends to think that, well, they're not going anywhere. Well, we'll wait and see. Because they're trying to remove it from any state funded colleges. So how much longer is it going to be before they start trying to pull it from private owned companies? I mean, I'm in Florida now. And Ron DeSantis would love to do something like that, prevent businesses from having those types of initiatives. So, yeah.
I've been having these conversations with, I have them with my children because my daughter goes to a private school. It's predominantly Black and brown private school. and she's in middle school, 8th grade right now. And she's going into high school. She got accepted to her high school of choice, which is a private school. And I was having a conversation with her about the Department of Education. And she was like, well, no one can do nothing since I'm already in there, right? I said, I'm going to do all that I can to make sure that they're not doing anything to take away from you, your peers, and everyone moving forward.
Mhm.
Because I always teach my kids, like, as much as I love you, you're not any more important than anyone else in this world. Like we all have our marks in this world that we must make and we must present. So like
Mhm.
when we talk about diversity and inclusion, like them trying to take away things that not that we've only not that we just have fought for, but things that are, I mean, they're truly needed because there's when you look back on the history and if you're someone who follows things such as the Department of Education, you'll see and you'll notice that nothing has been taken away from one group to give to another.
Mhm.
You can tell by the percentages of people that are reaching certain levels, whether it's in education, employment, those things. Like people, they're still reaching those levels of
Right.
hierarchy and supremacy. So nothing's being taken away. Like you said with Governor DeSantis, if he has his will, he's going to be able to run every single thing he can.
Because who's going to stop him?
Exactly.
There ain't nobody in power that's going to stop him. They're going to give him free reign to do because that's what
Right.
they want. So as long as he's in lockstep with what they want to do, they ain't going to stop him from doing that.
Right. And these young people today, they're more worried about TikTok being shut down than anything.
Mhm.
Like
That's a distraction.
it's a huge distraction. Not to dive too much into politics, but I've had this conversation off air many times where people are like, they didn't show up at the polls this year. They didn't show up. And I said, who had that conversation with the young people?
Right.
Because in 2020, post the execution and murder of George Floyd, you had then Vice President Biden showing up, taking walks, going into churches, kneeling with people, all of those
Mhm.
things. So he had this, he was showing face for this community of young people that were going through something. And that was a whole, I mean, we know with politics, you have people that are going, you have your image.
Right.
You have people that are like, yeah, this is what we should do. This is how we're going to get these people involved. In such short time, no one reached out to these young people this
Yeah.
past year.
Yeah. The thing is, I think what we're starting to learn is, I hope we're starting to learn is, and this also goes definitely specifically to health advocacy. The bottom line is we're going to have to put these down. We're going to have to put these down and we're going to have to start opening some rooms and start sitting down and having some face-to-face conversations.
Putting
It's
your
basically going to have to
body
go
into
old school.
space.
Yep.
Yes, put your body into space.
We got to put the bodies into spaces because these are becoming distractions. We thought it was a good way to get the word out for free, but now we're just going to have to go old school. I mean, so far go to the point where we ain't even writing with ink pens anymore. We need to go pencils and paper.
Look,
You
we
know.
already dialed back 4 years from pre-pandemic. Like,
Yep. 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 And it took that to kind of get us to understand. Maybe we need to start having some face to face conversations. And that's why I'm saying we need to be in these spaces. We need to be in the existing spaces, and we need to start creating our own spaces. And whoever don't like it, don't like it. And we also, as marginalized people in the United States, we also need to start becoming more global in our mindset, especially when it comes to healthcare and health advocacy, and this specifically what we're talking about is diabetes. We got to be more global. I got to tell you, when I went overseas to be at these conferences, I felt like I don't know. I just felt like an idiot because there was just so much that I didn't know because I haven't really educated myself on what's going on in the rest of the world. I got it real good compared to some folks that I've met in from India.
Look, I've
And
recorded.
even when I had my bad insurance, when I couldn't get my eye fixed, I had better insurance than they had in other countries.
I have an episode that'll be dropping in February with the doctor from India, and I have 5 other episodes with people from India, and they're strictly speaking on health insurance and coverage in
Mm-hmm.
India, and
Accessibility.
India being the most populated place in the world with people with diabetes.
Yep. And they can't
So,
get an insulin pump.
CGM.
Can't get a CGM. I met a dude. We were at conference the first time I went to Berlin. I met a guy. You know, when you go to like the area of the conferences where all the big companies are showing their new devices and all this
Mhm.
kind of stuff, there was Dexcom, there was Lilly, there was uh, Freestyle, and all these other people. The big boys are right there in the middle. So of course, any other time, the smaller guys they're way in the outskirts. There was a guy at a table by himself, way up against the wall. He was able to 3D print a housing for an insulin pump and then just put all the mechanics into that. He could make an insulin pump that wouldn't cost but about $500 out of pocket. But probably because of how much money he had to go all the way over in the corner where nobody even see him. But the big boys over here,
Right.
you got the latest and greatest thing, but the people that need it the most can't get access to it.
Right. Showing that they're not
Why
even
don't you help this dude that's over here 3D printing stuff and on a blasted 3D printer he can get at Micro Center? Help him make a device that can help the people in his country who don't have access to it. Don't absorb him, give him the whole bunch of money and tell him to go away. Help the man out to be able to help his people. You know, this is the whole thing is like get in these spaces and start getting in these people's faces and start having these conversations about what can be done. The
right.
woulda, coulda, shoulda time is out. We gotta what is
We
going to
gotta
be done
do,
now.
do,
Yeah.
do. You've been living with type 1 diabetes for nearing
A little over 30
four,
years.
nearing 4 decades.
Mm-hmm.
Nearing 4 decades. Like you talked about your diagnosis story being 25 years young. Um, that's a lot because I remember like I was diagnosed at 20
Mm-hmm.
and I already knew what my life was supposed to be. But now today, I mean, living with this chronic health condition, I mean, it is a lot. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Just like any other chronic health condition, it is a lot.
Right.
Um, but like for face value, again, like you're sharing and you're showing me that I can do more. I can be better. I can think higher and greater. I don't got to be trapped in or secluded in no space.
Right.
My community today expands. It's not just my neighborhood. It's not just the artists that I've worked with over the years.
Yeah.
Educate as an educator, the thousands of students and peers that I've been around. Now we're talking chronic health condition. This reaches globally. Globally, there's an insurmountable amount of people that we can reach, that we can teach, that we can befriend. And I just want from there. I just want to ask, like, how do you stay motivated, stay upbeat in these spaces, knowing your past, knowing the lived experience and journeys that you have had to pass through the and all the different steps.
I think one of the toughest pill to swallow in this experience is it took a chronic illness and me losing vision in my right eye for me to find purpose in just me being here, my being in this space. Because, when I was 25, I was just, all over the place. I wasn't like partying and smoking, drinking, all this kind of stuff. I was just, even at 25, I was dealing with depression, not knowing what I was supposed to do. I just this working a job that I thought that was the only thing I thought I could do. I started working in a hospital in Athens, Georgia, in environmental services, or basically a janitor, cleaning toilets, wiping hospital beds. Then when I got the nerve to move to Atlanta, what was the first job I looked for? Same type of job, because I thought that's all I could do. So basically, I was writing my own narrative, keeping myself, not that there's anything wrong with doing that type of work, but the mindset to think that, well, that's all I can do. I may as well just go and do that. And so I always had this thing was I got to do better than this. So when I was working in Atlanta in the hospital, mopping floors, I looked at an opportunity to try and get out of that. So I went and got in central supply. So I wasn't mopping floors anymore. I was just pushing IV poles and hospital beds. Then I said, okay, and now what can I do? So then I ended up in the computer room, and so the same thing with continue to move forward. It's like I got to do something. There's more that I can do with it. Just like with the comedy, I thought, okay, well, I don't want to be a road comic. Well, how can I take this comedy and use it use my talents to help somebody that's going through this? Because the more people I met that didn't understand, that they've never met anybody like me, that actually talks about it. When I'm at work now, I was we had a mock interview one day, and the lady asked me that we just trying to, like, I was an interviewee, and they asked you all these just underhand pitch questions. Well, tell us, what's the most challenging thing you ever had to deal with and why? And so I talked about, I had a health scare, because my PSA was crazy elevated. I thought I may have had, prostate cancer. Mm-hmm. So it was tough for me to go and seek help because I didn't want to know the bad news. Or if I talked about my diabetes and the first thing they came back with as far as critiqued my answer was like, well, maybe you probably don't want to talk about your chronic illness because they might think such and such. And I'm like, do you just broke the law by telling me that crap? And so stuff like that's what keeps me motivated. Because there's people out here that's stupidly trying to stop the narrative, trying to write my narrative, trying to tell me what I can and can't be.
Hey, Chelcie,
what I should and shouldn't do.
You must already know what our title. I already wrote a title down for your episode.
Oh, really?
Yes, I put it on here. I'm speaking to my brother right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I started off with Band of Brothers Changing the Narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, like I said, it's just, that's the thing that's kept me motivated. Is like, I ain't going to say I've had some dark times now. I've been dark enough. It's been dark enough to where I didn't want to be here no more. I thought this was it. This was the end. I can't do anything because I'm going to be, if I lose this one, then I'm really done. And so, like I said, I didn't want to be here at some point. But then again, you align yourself with the community. It pains me sometimes to realize that some of the people that are closest to me, that love me the most, are not within arm's reach, but they are all over this world. So, but even with that, knowing that they're not within arm's reach, I know I'm not alone. All I got to do is pick up the phone and reach out to them, and they got me. And I wish that for everybody that lives with this chronic disease or any other, is that you find that community to support you, to lift you up, because you got to lift them up too, because they're going to have some bad days. So knowing that I have that community. That's what's got me through. Because remember, when I was diagnosed, I didn't have a community. It took from 1989 to probably 2007 before I even found a community. And so that's the first thing I'll tell anybody that's newly diagnosed is get yourself a community. And once you start building that community, then you start building that support. I had a lady yesterday at work because I'd done I don't know if you remember, because I was doing that supply collection at work for supplies to diabetes supplies to give to the folks like that were affected by the hurricane. And one of the ladies that donated some, she gave me like a bunch of insulin and a bunch of other stuff. And I was getting off work yesterday and walking to the elevator. And she said, "Hey, my daughter wants to meet you." And I was like, "Huh?" And her daughter has type 1. And I told her about you. And she said, "My daughter wants to meet you." And I'm like, okay, so something's working. So I need to remember that next time I have a dark day. You know, not in a way to toot my own horn, is just to remind me that something's working here, that I've touched somebody and I've planted a seed. So I don't know how the daughter is offhand, but she may become another advocate.
Your
There's a
purpose,
seed.
your purpose has expanded.
Yeah. And so the seed is planted now. So I got to nurture that and then watch it grow. And so those are the things that keep me motivated. The people that I meet, the people that I talk to, listening to people that are going through the same thing I'm going through, and trying to figure it out along the way. Because I turned 60 back in September, and that was a kick in the pants. It's like, okay, how much time I got left? But I can't worry about that. You know, you just got to stand on purpose, and be due diligent. And what is that? What did that say? You got to be duty bound. You got to be duty bound in this. And
What are some of the things that you feel as though have been misunderstood about you and diabetes? Because I mean, literally, you were diagnosed at 25, so
yeah,
you were handling all your own from day one.
hmm yeah. It was a struggle because, like, you know, I had to get past the mindset that either all those times that I may have been dropping the ball on my care caused, you know, the issue with my eye. So I had to get past that that self-loathing and possible blaming myself for it. Because there's no way of knowing. I mean, somebody can lay. I mean, I've been accused of, oh, well, you probably were doing this, that, and the others. Like, you don't even know what I was doing. So just go ahead and leave that alone. So I didn't allow it to, I had to fight to keep it from setting in my head and believing that. One of the things that has gotten me is like I said, is the stigma of diabetes, specifically in the workplace. Because I guess in a way I thought people have gotten smarter as opposed to how your employers treat you when you have a chronic illness or an invisible illness, as it's often referred to. And it amazed me at the bigger companies I work in, how many people who work there don't tell their supervisors or their coworkers that they have this condition. If nothing more, the main reason you want to share that with someone is because those folks might help you in a situation. You can't just leave them in the dark and you end up having an episode and then they not know what to do.
Because it will happen.
Yeah. I mean, I fought just to have, because like I said, I work in a big company. There's a wellness center in the adjacent building. So there's nurse practitioners on site. So if you have any type of health issue, or we can get you don't even need a primary care. You can go down there and get all that done as far as, like, you know, simple prescriptions, stuff like that. And so I fought to have them come up and teach us how to use those defibrillators on the wall. But you see those things everywhere, but you
Right,
know
the
you don't know how to
AED.
use it. And it was like, have y'all even talked to these people who are trying to get somebody to show us how to use these things? I know there's got instructions in there, But when we finally got around to them coming up and showing us how to do it, those things are more complex than you think. Just because it's got, instruction that it looked like it was written by the folks that made it like a IKEA instructions or something. But still, it's not something that's very intuitive. And plus, there's a mindset you got to have when you think about using a defibrillator. About, do you know what you're about to do? You have to send an electric shock through this person's body. And that's a lot to carry for some people, even though they know they're trying to help somebody, but that's a lot to carry. So the right person has to be able to do this. And a lot of times you ain't got time to wait for security to come up there because they the only ones that have been CPR trained. That was the other thing I found out, is that nobody on the floor knew CPR. And it's like, so we got security down on the first floor. We're up on the fourth and fifth floor. How long is it going to take him to come up here for somebody to fall out and may not have a pulse and needs CPR, and nobody here knows how to do it? And so that carried on into trying to spread awareness about diabetes in the workplace, because I started talking about it. The Wellness Center reached out to the communications department, and then I did a story in the work website and all this kind of stuff. And then that opened the gates for other patients to reach out to me, saying that they never talked about it, never told their supervisors. There was one guy who sat not that far from me. We just did I set up a chat on WebEx where all the folks that have diabetes can talk about it. We can trade ideas and support one another. He's sitting over there a few rows away from me. His blood sugar is like 349. And I think he was actually type 2. And I was like, well, do you need some help with anything? He's like, no, I'm fine. So I go to the restroom and I walk by the break room. He's in there eating a doggone Rice Krispies treat. I'm like, did you just tell me your blood sugar was 349? What are you doing about it? And so this is the kind of stuff that, sadly, it makes it difficult in the workplace to have this specific chronic illness, because people that don't have diabetes, that don't have an understanding, who have been wrapped themselves in the blanket of diabetes stigma, will see him doing that and say, well, it's not that serious a thing because he's not taking care of himself. So when I talk about what I go through, it just goes in one ear and out the other. So I got to keep going around banging the drum, the importance of being able to get support from the people around you about this. Because if these people just sit and look the other way, I'm done. So
there's a great community of people that still are wrapped in dinosaur ages when it comes to diabetes.
Yep.
They think it's just sugar and unhealthy lifestyles.
Or you just can't have sugar,
Right.
or you ate too much sugar and got it. And it seems, one of the things that I've started to know is, it seems like diabetes has just a stronger or a deeper level of stigma than other chronic illnesses, simply because of the way we treat it in this country. We make jokes about it in TV. We make jokes about it behind closed doors. And then the folks that have the condition, we start to believe the stigma, and then we don't take our treatment seriously. And this is what happens, especially in, say, lower income communities, where the education about diabetes is maybe not as strong. People walk around with diabetes, either don't even know it or don't take it seriously, or it's just something I got to deal with. Dandruff is something you got to deal with, but this is something deeper than that. You got people in your household that are dependent on you to be around. You got to take this seriously. There's people that actually care about you, that want you to be around, but sometimes those folks aren't really being as supportive as they should, just because they haven't been educated. It's not that they don't love you. They haven't been educated. So open the door for the advocates to come in and start spreading that education and start removing that stigma that's been, it's almost like, they throw the stigma at us and it sticks to us and we just accept it, you know?
Right. There's
And
different levels to actually living with diabetes.
Mhm.
There's the level of diagnosis, level of education,
Yep.
level of missed education. A lot of us didn't receive that initial education that is gifted to a lot of people.
Hmm.
It's specifically like caregivers today are given a lot of information.
Right.
We should equally be given that education. I had a conversation with a young lady who was telling me that her family now, like when she's at family events, they say things to her that like annoy her, where they're to the point where they're saying things like, "Why are you giving insulin now? What's like you didn't used to do that. Why are you pulling out your pen here when you're about to eat? You didn't used to do that." And
Hmm.
she's telling them, like, I know better today.
Right.
I know more and I know better today. And she was like, previously they just thought that she because she was taking her insulin that she was okay.
Right.
But she was like, she knows that she wasn't okay. But today, since she knows better, she's doing better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I also think is we as advocates have to learn to empower these patients to be stronger in those types of settings. Because I can only empathize with a lot of folks in these family settings when you're around the people that you love, but they don't give you the support that you need. And you have a hard time blaming them because it's just because they haven't been educated or they don't want to educate themselves. And so you got to give them ever so how much a spoonful of grace
Mhm.
because they just don't know. And then there's sometimes when you started out with a spoon of grace and now you up to like 2 cups of grace. It's like, all right, well, I'm cutting you off. Grace is done. So you either with me or you against me. So you either stop talking or just I'm going
Look,
to eat somewhere else.
look, we all got people that we told about this diagnosis 20 some years ago,
Hmm.
but every single time they're around you, it's like it's brand new.
Yeah.
Like no matter how much they see you in the community, see you via social media, you've shared information on newer technology, newer
Yep.
insulins, everything, reports, no matter what. Still, when they pop up or you pop up in the same setting, they're like, "Oh, you do that? Like,
Oh,
huh? Like,
oh, you still got that? Like,
yeah."
dude, I ain't have the flu
It wasn't a tag. Like, we wasn't playing a game of tag. Ain't
for
nobody.
real.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. I
still,
just kept it in my pocket at the
look,
time. Is that, are you cool?
look, it's freeze tag. I'm still frozen. Like,
For real. I was waiting for somebody to run up and tag me,
somebody
man.
go up and tag.
Been 30 years. Somebody tag me.
Right. Yeah, it's different when we talk about like family, community, but like relationships. Like
Hmm.
has diabetes over the years affected you and relationships? I mean, it could be work, family, love interest, whoever.
Not really. I mean, it definitely hasn't affected me as family. My family has always been supportive. Um, there was a lot they didn't understand because a lot of it was still. I mean, my mother worked in healthcare. She worked at a local clinic, so she saw a lot of stuff. And I think she was kind of in denial when I was first diagnosed, which it wasn't. I didn't take it as a negative. I thought that she was just that concerned. She didn't want me to have
Mhm.
that condition. But family has always been supportive. I've never had an issue. My brothers have been crazy supportive. My father was supportive. Mother, everybody, friends, for the most part, have definitely been supportive. They listen, and for any young heads that are listening right now, let me tell you something about friends. When you're in high school, you got tons of friends. You think you just got all these folks that you're friends with and know your name, this, that, and the other. You think they're your friends because they know your name, they know you from football and this, that, and the other. And then when you go to college, that starts to dwindle off because now you're starting to get in the real world. You're starting to build real relationships because you're starting to meet people who are just as quirky as you are, who just as strong as you are, weak as you are, and you just end up with a less amount of friends. And then when you start working, it's almost like you have none because then you start being really more selective about the people you want in your space. And if they ain't down all the way down for you, you don't need them. And you'll notice that you'll just have a handful of actual friends because those are the only people you need to really support you. And as I've gotten older, that's basically what it's come down to is
Mhm.
I know who's with me and who's against me. And if they start out with me and I start to notice that they aren't with me, then we can easily part ways. I don't no harm, no foul because they got stuff to deal with too. We treat this as adults and we either have each other or we don't. And that's something a lot of people that I've still remain in contact with after many years, whether it be college or whatever, when you talk to them now, people that I know that are my age or a little younger, I gotta tell you, bro, there's some folks, I mean, I've lost vision, lost jobs, lost this, that, and the other, but there's some other folks that have lost that I had no idea that what they were going through. It may have been their own chronic illness. You know, I've got a friend now. I thought she had the greatest job in the world. She became a production assistant on a lot of TV shows and stuff. And that was the coolest thing ever to me. You get to work on all these movies and television, all that kind of stuff. Did not know she was dealing with a chronic illness. You know, and now she's having some hard times, and I check on her often. Um, I like to say a lot of times I check on people more than they check
That's
on me
wonderful.
sometimes, but that's just the way I am. I ain't got no problem sending a text if I can't call. You know I'm going to check on you. If you got a problem with it, let me know, then I'll stop. But, you know, that's not going to stop me from being concerned because I've been there in that empty space when nobody was checking on me, when I didn't think anybody cared. So I choose to do differently, whether you cool with it or not, or whether you appreciate it or not. But that community, like I said, building that community and building that support group. A lot of times it takes some building, and the ones that are good will stick around always.
Right. Or the friendships as we grow up, like you said, may have dwindled down,
Mm-hmm.
but our love has expanded. Like we truly invest in
Yeah.
things that truly matter, that we
Yep.
truly care for, we truly want to keep protected, all of those things,
Exactly.
like we're fully invested in them.
Yeah. Yeah. You as you get older, you ain't got no problem telling about you love them.
Yep.
Because
Yes.
because
Yes.
I tell my friends all the time I love them when I leave, and it's kind of off putting for some folks, but that ain't my problem.
Right.
If you got a problem me loving you, you need to go check something in your own life
Mhm.
because I'm giving you something that didn't cost me a dime, and that doesn't have to end at any time, even when I leave this earth. You know, and when I was younger, I didn't think that way, but now it's like it's not a matter of because I'm getting older and think I'm going to leave this earth or nothing. It's like give people the stuff that you want. You know what I mean? You know, if you want people to embrace you and yeah, give it to them. I mean, it's like to now when I go to these conferences and I see people that I haven't seen in a year or whatever, and it's like you get around these folks and start hugging one another. It's like, I'm good now. You know, year was kind of crappy to begin with. Now I get around this and, you know, I get, you know, you get fueled again. You know, there's a conference I go to and this past year, all the advocates of color, we went into a room and we just sat around a table.
I know what
Almost like
conference you're talking about.
it's called Healthy Voices. It's
In New
sponsored
York.
by, yeah, it's sponsored by Janssen. And I've been going to it since 2018. Served as an advisor, I've spoken this, that, and the other. And
It was at Princeton this past year.
yeah, yeah, this year and the year before, because
Okay.
like it was to me, I liked it in Princeton because it's quiet. as opposed to going to something like Philly, and it's kind of noisy, in the city and stuff. But it was good to be in that setting because it was quiet. And like I said, we all of us, one of the advocates said, look, all of us, he just started reaching out to all the advocates of color to come in and it's everybody sit down. And all of us, diabetes, HIV, irritable bowel disease, all these different advocates, we were just of color. We were sitting around the table, and was something extremely powerful about that. One of the girls, one of the ladies sitting next to me, she was the first advocate of color that attended the very first Healthy Voices. And to see her there at that setting where all of us were at the same table, that was some strong stuff. And there was a lot of power in that room when we came together. Um, and that was one of the things when I spoke, I wanted to say, look, y'all need to just take a minute to just suck this in and just feel what we're doing right now. Now, I mean, yeah, there have been some out there in the hallway that thought we were just being separatists or whatever, but maybe they just need to read a book and just sit down and be educated. But that's one of the things, like I was saying, is as diabetes advocates, we need to be more global, and we also need to be reaching out to other advocates from different conditions and learning from one another. Because the truth of the matter is, whether it's HIV or diabetes, we are all in the same battle as patients of color, as advocates of color. We need to start supporting one another. And that's why I was saying we need to start creating these spaces where we all can come together and strengthen one another, because we are all in this same battle. It don't make no difference what your condition is, as long as we need to start pulling together with the Hispanic community. We need to start pulling together with the Asian community, being more global, learning about diabetes and other conditions in India and Africa. We just need to start being more open and inviting and helping one another get in these spaces, because we're not going to get through this alone.
Right. So I'm thinking about the lady you said at the Healthy Voices this past year,
Mm-hmm.
who, I mean, she was the first person of color in that space. And just for her to see all of y'all,
Mm-hmm.
like she knows, like she took a step for this big leap to occur.
Yep.
And it all comes full circle. Like she was helping her then.
Yeah, exactly. Because see, that's the thing. They didn't reach out to her to come. You have to apply. So
Right.
she took it upon herself to put herself in that situation. And that's what I'm saying. And that's what all of us had done at that table. We said, well, let's do it. We got to push forward and get more folks in these spaces that look like us. We fought to have the folks that were in charge, the ladies that ran the conference while we were there. We fought to have somebody of color on that group. We had her in the room as well, and we gave her flowers. Like, look, you don't know what it means to see you up there.
Changing the narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um, what's some good advice that you've either received or that you've owned that you could share with someone who's either newly diagnosed, the caregiver of someone newly diagnosed, or someone living with a chronic health condition that just needs to like start new, start fresh?
Yeah. Start building that community with your family, whatever friends that you may have. Don't be afraid to use these electronic devices to find a community, because they're out there. Definitely, if you're newly diagnosed, look into finding some resources, say either from, there are obviously nonprofits that support your condition. Get online and start doing the research. Use those, say, websites or whatever to find resources in your area, people that are close to you that you may be able to connect with. There might, there might be somebody live right up the street from you that shares that same condition that you can sit down and talk to. Because it's one thing, yeah, to find a community online, but sometimes some people need something a little bit more personal, especially uh, folks who are older who are newly diagnosed that may want to sit down and actually talk to someone as opposed to, getting online and being virtual. Just don't be afraid to ask because this is important. Know that you got to remember that you're never alone in this. You ain't the first one to be diagnosed with this. You know, it might be your first time around the corner, but just use those resources that are there. Next thing I would say is like be diligent and talk to your physician. Get to know your physician, your specialists. Make sure that they're talking to you the way you want to be talked to. And that's heavy because if he or she is not addressing you or acknowledging you in a manner that you feel comfortable that you deserve, fire. This has been a big issue with patients of color, especially who are of a certain age, that feel that, and I've said this in conferences all whether in the States or overseas. It's like in the United States, many people of color feel that healthcare professionals are basically members of authority. Same way they see the cops. Whatever the doctor says, just do that and move on and don't ask questions.
Right.
You
One
ain't got
wears
to do that.
blue, one wears blue, one wears white.
Exactly. All you got to do, you don't have to, if he's not talking to you, if he's busy just talking to you and not asking you questions and engaging you, if you ask questions and he just kind of blows it off, fire him. He ain't the only trick in town. If you don't know of any other, say, specialists in your area, just use your resources and find somebody else. Find an advocate that may be able to do some footwork for you and find somebody that can help you. Because this is something that needs to be understood, that there is bias, unconscious bias in the healthcare business. And marginalized people are the ones that have received that bias. And so we have to be able to be strong enough to say, hey, you're not going to talk to me like this. Or I asked you a question. Can you help me out with this? Hold his feet to the fire and make him understand that this is important to me. I know you got somebody else to see, but we're going to get my answers here, or I can get them somewhere else. Now, if he pushed back, and another thing I want to make clear, and I don't just mean the doctor, I mean the folks in the front that take your credit card or debit card to pay your copay. You make sure you get respect from them too. Take somebody with you if you don't feel strong enough to stand up to them and make sure that they treat you with respect, because I've heard it and seen it too many times. These types that work in the front office want to treat you a certain way, and the doctor knows nothing about it. The doctor may be down and cool with you, but your front office folks are a bunch of assholes,
Right.
and want to treat you with disrespect.
As much as, like, you may have a favorite thing you like to eat, right?
Right.
If you know that the market or the restaurant, whatever grocery you have to go to get that item is disrespectful, doesn't treat you as a human, doesn't welcome you, as much as you love that, and it's your favorite thing to eat, you're not going to step in there.
Right.
You're going to try. You're going to find somewhere else that can make it, or you're going to tell them about that gift of flavor that you love, and maybe they'll try to make it somewhere else.
Right.
You're not going to put your hard-earned money into a system that isn't going to be favorable to you.
Right. I'll tell you a story. My mother told me this at Thanksgiving dinner. She went to the doctor and she's sitting in the waiting room. Older black woman comes in, walks up to kind of ask if she can see the doctor. She didn't have an appointment. She was sick and she wanted to see the doctor. And so they asked her who she was, looked her up in the system, and basically sat there and told her, well, ma'am, you owe such and such a dollars. You know, we need to have that paid before he can see you. And so the lady didn't have it. So she ended up leaving sick. My mother, being who she is, walks up and says, look, did you really have to do that? Sit there and tell that woman like that, and especially tell her that loud the way all of us could hear it.
Right.
So she called him on it. And then when she goes back to see the doctor thanked her. Same thing happened with me. I went to a doctor, to my eye doctor. Me and my wife are sitting there just waiting, and an elderly Asian couple walks in. the wife, she's asking for some help, and I think it was there was a document she was trying to read. Apparently, she had a thick, I think it was Vietnamese accent, and she could speak relatively good English, but she didn't read it well. And so she was asking for some help to read a document or a statement or something like to that nature. And the guy at the desk was just kind of just dismissive and just because he didn't want to listen. When someone has a thick accent, all you got to do is slow down and listen. But he didn't want to do that. You know, it was just a little bit too much for him to try and continue to listen to her and trying to figure out what she was saying. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And so that's what I'm saying. If you've been newly diagnosed, and you just make sure that everybody's treating you with respect from the front office to the doctor. Because if they don't, find somebody else. Because that's going to save you a lot of trouble. Because if you can get with somebody that's actually going to sit down and listen to you, that means a lot. And it can make the whole process of you getting treatment a lot easier.
Good brother Chelcie, I wish wholeheartedly that you could wear off on a lot of people in this community. That's something I hear often by myself also, but truly, from your lived experience, from the experiences of people that were here even before you,
right?
I can tell that they instilled in you the truth and the power of advocating, of being there, showing face.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave you a sense of comfort to where no matter how much turmoil is going on in the climate, your skin will never thin, meaning you got thick skin.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from, again, all honor to the people who put you here, those who birthed you, those ancestors who helped root your family.
Right.
They've instilled those values. That commitment that you have today truly shows. And anyone who's watching this, who's has a chance to listen to this, tap into community. Take a knock on Chelsea's door. Take a knock on Will's door.
Mm-hmm.
We will show up. We show up for us. Seriously.
Yep.
Because if we don't, who will?
Yeah, that's where we are now. That's what I was saying is like we're getting to the page is about to be turned, and all we're gonna have is our communities. And that's the main thing that's in our history is the main thing they tried to tear down is our community. That's why they burned Black churches, because the church was a nucleus of the community. Mm-hmm. That's where we went to gain our strength, to learn, to persevere. We did that in our community, the community center, the gymnasium, the basement of the church, wherever we could gather. That's where we got our strength. So that's what the oppressor did, was try to destroy those spaces. And once you destroy the spaces, you destroy the spaces in mind to where you think you can't. And so we got to get back to that community. And like I said, we may have to get off these devices and start getting back into sitting in either sitting in the pews or sitting on a stool or something, sitting in around a campfire or something in somebody's living room is going to come down to really, have to rebuild these communities and understand that we cannot do this alone.
Because we know that we just marked the 103rd year anniversary of when insulin was first used to treat Leonard Thompson. On this day, January 15th, 96 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born.
Right.
Those are legends and legacies that we must continue as we push forward and we move forward. Us living with type 1 diabetes, we have to keep sharing the history of diabetes and where we are today.
Right.
Because when we turn the clock back to when you were diagnosed 30 some years ago, when I was diagnosed 22 years ago, so much has changed since then, where we can be not only in the space to show up, but we can be healthy here.
Right.
More alive in that space. And I just want to say, like, Chelcie, again, appreciate it. Your flowers are going to be gifted to you, because you mentioned something a while ago about the emotions of person, the emotions of man.
Right.
Like a true man, as we grow and we mature, we explore those emotions. We do. Man, woman, child, explore your emotions.
Right.
Share with people your true feelings, whether it's in a medical facility, whether it's at the front desk, whether it's at work, anywhere. Let people know how you feel about the situation.
Yeah.
You don't have to be cemented into the way things are going.
Right.
Because if we were cemented in them today, Chelcie, how would your
They
vision
move
be?
forward.
Look,
You can't
how,
move
how,
forward.
how would your vision be if you were cemented in that way?
Right.
If I was cemented in that way, back when I was 20 years old, I would have just let diabetes go, because for many years, diabetes was in my backpack, but I wasn't digging into that backpack
Right.
to actually read through the chapters and books and take notes, be educated in it.
Yeah.
But today we're able to do all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. We just gotta, to me, it's really up to the advocates, because we can't rely on the companies or the other big orgs that are taking money from the companies. We just have to work with each other. We got to lockstep in moving forward, and start spreading the information. That's one of the reasons that I like going to these conferences. Conferences is the what I can learn, I can bring back.
Mhm.
Some folks might want to. A lot of people may not be interested in the latest and greatest technology, but the experiences of being able just to be in these spaces to see what is being developed, what is capable, that means a lot. Just to see it's more to it than just this condition that I gotta deal with and then pay all this money out of insurance and this, that, and the other. There's more to it than that. And I think that there's a lot to be gained from being able to really see the inner workings of what's going on out there to keep us alive.
On that note, Chelcie, I must ask you this. I ask all my guests this at the end as we wrap up. Today, there's not a cure readily available for everyone. There's not. There's some functional cures that are in the working, Functional, meaning something else will be used to keep diabetes out of the forefront. But as technology advances, as clinical research advances, we do need more people of color involved in that stuff too. That's a
Mhm.
whole nother topic.
Yeah,
But
very.
on the day, a true cure is here, and you wake up, you step on the floor, you get a chance to look at your CGM, you done did everything. You like, my blood sugar been at about 80 all night. I done
Right.
got up, went and brushed my teeth, everything. It's still sitting around 80 flat. You hop on social media or you get some texts, some calls, people are telling you like, my diabetes is gone. Like it's gone. Like we've all been fully cured. I mean, we'll still be able to do all the advocacy we do. We might be able to do even more
Right.
because we'll be able to do things like even more globally with travel, expense, so many other things. On that day, you find out a true cure is here and you've been cured of type 1 diabetes. Chelsea, what do you do?
I go and find out who needs help, see who didn't get the cure, or probably ask her, how did I get it and nobody else did? Or if I'll make sure if everyone got it. And if everyone got it that has diabetes has got the cure, okay, now what we need to collectively do, we need to go help someone else in another chronic illness space to find theirs. I don't think advocacy stops because you reached the finish line or you got cured. Advocacy is a kind of an umbrella to me because there's other folks that need help. And so I can't, I couldn't possibly get cured and then just go sit down and say, well, now I can do what I want to do. No, that's to me. I mean, I'm not the most religious person in the world, but I don't see a blessing working that way. If I've been blessed with a cure, then what good am I sitting on it and claiming it for myself that that's all that I got mine. Now you go get yours. No, that doesn't make sense to me.
Chelsea,
So
um, that just touched me heavy. Gotta let you know that, good brother, because all the conversations that I've had people that said like they want to go help other people do other things because of the
mhm.
time that they have now. But how you just put that out there, like if you're cured, it's more than just diabetes. Diabetes is a small percent of the ailments that are lingering in this world. So much you just said, like that's true empathy.
Yeah,
A true empath at heart embodies the things that others are going through and want to help in that healing also.
right. Exactly.
And that's what you just gifted us through the entirety of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like if I got cured of diabetes, then fine. And I need to go to LA and start help putting out some fires or something.
Right.
I need to go to North Carolina to help rebuild their communities that were destroyed by the hurricane. I need to go to India and help those folks get what they need to survive. I need to go to Africa to help the people that look like me to know that they aren't alone. And if they're impoverished, then I need, like I said, a blessing don't work that way, man. Blessings
We
don't work that way.
we know as people living with type 1 diabetes that so many things take up our time, take up our space. But if we don't have this, like we maximize our time already. We
Right.
truly do maximize our time. But just think about how much more time we'd be able to do. Like when you were talking about the superheroes, the Batmans, the Supermans. Her cape is never gone. It's forever on.
Exactly. Exactly.
Superman won't have nothing on you, Chelsea. Like,
No, none of us. You know, we
yeah.
gotta, if you got in this, you can't get into advocacy and expect to just clock out.
Right.
You advocating in your sleep. You advocate when you get up out of bed in the morning because you prove them wrong that you won't be able to be diligent enough to get up and keep moving. So yeah, you don't clock out with advocating.
You
Nah,
don't fuck out
it don't
with
work that way.
advocate. It don't work that way. And that note, Chelsea, my good brother, thank you. I truly appreciate you for joining me on the Chronically Well podcast, where we have real conversations with community that needs to be heard. Because one, Chelcie Rice, you are someone that truly needs to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate you, man.